Hey, good morning, everybody. This is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich. Want to give a quick update for folks, especially in the mountains, foothills, and down into the Piedmont for later today for the possibility of some thunderstorms. Now, we're not looking at anything widespread, severe-wise, but we could see some strong storms, and like yesterday, hail again could become a big threat in the mountains. Now, we're not looking at large hail, but much like we saw yesterday, we could see a lot of small hail that could cause some accumulation. So this is a current look right now of the radar, satellite, and temperatures. And you see this big cluster of storms to the west. This is in Tennessee, Kentucky, into Arkansas. And if you look at the curvature, this is what we call a mesoscale convective vortex. And that's just a fancy name for vorticity that was created by a bunch of thunderstorms over the last 24 hours or so. And this little thing is going to be tracking our way later today with a lot of heat and humidity building for this time of year over the Carolinas. This will likely help induce a lot of afternoon thunderstorms. So let's turn the temperatures off. We'll turn the radar off. We'll turn everything off here for a second to kind of give you a view of what I anticipate happening later today. SPC has their outlook. You see everything in green. That basically means there's a chance for thunderstorms. We're not even in the slight risk today, just a general thunderstorm risk. So that's a good sign. That means there's not going to be anything widespread. There is a slight risk over West Texas and Oklahoma. There is a small wind threat today, and really that's going to be the thing we're going to watch. The green area is a 5% risk of some damaging winds, which mean we got a 5% chance of any one point on the map seeing a 58-mile-per-hour wind gust or higher. The hail threat is very similar to yesterday, mainly across the mountains. And I'm going to show you why the mountains are particularly susceptible to seeing some hail. Tornado threat, obviously, nothing over the Carolinas. We're not worried at all about tornadoes today. The wind shear in the atmosphere is just not there to produce a tornado. So as we look at what's going on with the visible satellite image, there's our system. We'll turn the radar on really quick. A couple things I'm going to point out here. These are the dew point temperatures. Dew points in the brighter reds and yellows are generally in the 60s to 70s. You can see once again, like yesterday, there's a small area of western North Carolina with some dry air. I expect that to change a little bit as this moisture down over South Carolina and eastern North Carolina begins to advect to the north. So there's definitely a lot more moisture at the low levels of the atmosphere today to work with than we had yesterday. So I think we're going to see a little bit more widespread thunderstorm activity this afternoon. One of the things I look at also is that mid-level vorticity. And you can see that MCV I was talking about created by the thunderstorms. There's definitely a little bit of spin going on right there. If we take a look at a couple other things, looking at the 300 millibar winds, there's not a lot, so we're not worried about wind speed. When you look at the 700 millibar heights, you can see this little disturbance. There's definitely a 700 millibar area of low pressure here over southern Indiana, Illinois, western Kentucky, and Tennessee. So this is the little system we're really going to be tracking for later this afternoon. As far as instability right now, this is that thunderstorm cape. You can see there's not a lot over us, but there's a lot building to the south. I would anticipate that coming to the north. When we look at wind shear, notice all of the shears in Texas. This is why there's a tornado risk down in Texas and not so much over us. It's really more today going to be about hail and wind, and even the wind threat is pretty minimal at best. Why are we worried about the hail? Well, I talked a little bit about this. I'm going to show you this little platform I use. This is what we call the Buff Kit, and this is the NAM model today. The one thing I want you to focus on is you see this WBZ. That's the wet bulb zero. That's essentially where hail can form in the atmosphere, and you can see how low it is. It's well below 10,000 feet. In fact, if you look over here on the left, wet bulb zero height at 2 o'clock this afternoon is only at 8,334 feet, which means hail could form at 8,334 feet essentially. And if you're in the mountains and let's say you're at 3,000 or 4,000 feet of elevation, maybe even 4, 5, 6,000 feet, that means you're only a couple thousand feet away from that. So the hail has very little time to melt on the way down. And as we go into the afternoon hours, that wet bulb zero stays pretty much in the same spot. If you look at all these numbers over here, you may not understand what any of these mean. The one thing you know, if you see red bars, that means it's high. That means there's a threat for something. And notice our CAPE is pretty low. Helicity is not even there. CAPE is low. But the one thing you see bright red is that wet bulb zero height. It's all the way maxed out because it's below 9,000 feet. So as we go into the afternoon, that wet bulb zero is pretty low. and I would anticipate hail, especially small hail, becoming an issue. These storms will not be very large this afternoon. So let's take a look at some of the model data as far as future radar. Well, first model we're going to look at here is going to be the HRW model, and we'll start this morning at about 8 a.m. We'll go to this morning's run here to kind of give you an idea. You can see it's overdoing the amount of precipitation back to the west. It's trying to crank things up into the afternoon a little bit quicker than I think it's going to happen. It's probably going to take till mid-afternoon this afternoon to get things going. But as we go into the 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock this afternoon, notice we've got several clusters of storms developing. And today they look like they could really crank up across the Piedmont. Now again, these look like isolated areas. These aren't supercells because we don't have any shear in the atmosphere. As we go into the evening hours, it looks like a pretty good line could form and move across the area as we go into the afternoon. Taking a look at the NAM model, we'll start the same thing. The NAM actually seems to have a little better handle on the situation this morning. As we go into the afternoon, this is about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5, 6, 7, 8. You see the line of storms moving through, and things will calm down a little bit as we go into the evening hours. But notice another cluster forming back here in Tennessee. This will likely be storms we'll have to watch for Saturday, because as we go into Saturday morning, it looks like storms try to crank back up, especially early Saturday morning, even into the afternoon hours. So the next couple of days are going to be pretty active in the afternoon and evenings, and really that'll be the time frame we'll watch. Right now, the reason I don't think storms will get going real early today, we've got a lot of cloud cover. Temperatures are in the 50s and 60s. The atmosphere to the west is getting unstable. We've got this thing approaching, so I would expect storms to crank out in eastern Tennessee, move into the mountains, and then in the foothills, and these things will start probably about 1 or 2 in these areas and then move down into the Piedmont into the late evening hours. In the Charlotte area, we're likely going to see some storms developing probably closer to 5, 6, and 7 o'clock this evening. So nothing widespread. These are typical thunderstorms we would normally have in, let's say, April, May, or June, not typically March. Not looking at anything widespread severe. I would think the severe threat would be very minimal today. Like yesterday, even though we had loads of hail reports, very few of them were severe criteria, which means 1-inch diameter. So while the hail looked awesome, it caused a lot of accumulation. That's not damaging hail. That won't hurt your roof. That won't hurt your car. That will not cause property damage. It's just one of those inconvenient type things. So we'll keep an eye on it. I wouldn't be surprised to see a spot up like 1 or 2 severe thunderstorm warnings. There certainly won't be enough to get a watch or anything like that, but just something to keep an eye on and give you a heads up as we go into the afternoon. So if you're going to have outdoor activities today or Saturday, make sure you stay tuned to the weather, because lightning probably will be the biggest threat if you're outside. And if you have outdoor plans and you don't want to get wet, you have to track the storms on WCNC.com. That's a quick update on what's going on today. Of course, I'll be on the air starting at 4, 5, 6, and 11. And as always, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Just look for WX Brad.